Hello there. Thank you so much for staying tuned to Citizen TV on this 5th day of July 2021. My name is Sam Gituku. Welcome back as we begin the conversation on what's informing the public discourse. And I want to begin by introducing the panel that we have today. Professor Jacqueline Odol is back. She's a nominated Member of Parliament from ODM. Karibu sana to the show.
Good morning.
We have Speaker John Kagusha from Nyeri County. Karibu sana.
Thank you very much.
And Senator Ledamo Lekina from Narok. Karibu sana.
Good morning.
Great, and I want us to begin by looking at what's in the papers. On the front page of the Daily Nation, you'll see graft, Raila, Ruto, trade fresh barbs. The DP was responding to Odinga's statement that he would push for jailing of all corrupt leaders, and of course the two leaders are quoted on what they said. Raila Odinga, speaking on Saturday in Mombasa, I believe, said that they will be arrested, prosecuted and sent to prison. He was referring to what he believes are corrupt leaders. Then DP Ruto yesterday responded to him and said when they were in government, they were stealing from the youth. And the war of words continues. Then at the top there, you'll see Jubilee to change colors in rebrand. Meeting of ruling parties top organ to also discuss planned coalition with ODM. And the story continues on page 4. I'm just wondering what colors they'll adopt. We'll be asking Speaker Kagusha because he comes from that party. And also what more is to happen, because the story on page 4 is saying that Jubilee Party Secretary General, or rather Deputy Secretary General Joshua Kutuni, said the party would also deliberate on a new look that will involve tweaking of colors, symbols and logos. And he said that the ruling party's current colors were derived from the National Alliance of President Kenyatta and the United Republic Party, URP of DP Ruto, who have since broken ranks politically. So you don't know what color that will change to. On the front page of the Standard is the main story again. Raila and Ruto clash over graft purge claims. The DP accuses ODM leader of graft within ruling party. A day after Raila said he will jail corrupt officials in the Jubilee administration should he ascend to power after next year's general election. And therefore the question, is he declaring his presidential bid for the 2022 presidential poll? Another question that we'll be trying to seek answers here. But let me begin with you, Speaker Kagusha, because you see that your party is going through quite a bit of evolution. Yeah. And this is something that has happened every 5 years since 2013, that the coalition has been in existence. What's going on and what colors is your party likely to adopt?
Well, I have said times without an end that I do not in any way represent the Jubilee Party in any of my arguments in this platform, because I've told you again, as a speaker, I tend to be a speaker of many political parties. I have many political parties in the County Assembly of Nyeri. That notwithstanding, I think the Jubilee Party has had its share of troubles and has been shaken. Sometimes one would actually think to the core because of the upheaval between the two top leaders, particularly the head of the party and the deputy head of the party. And for this reason, you can see we have people who are moving towards UDA and others, of course, hoping that Jubilee can be able to come up again. There is a school of thought in Jubilee, from my observation, that the fortunes of the party have been dwindling with time. And there is very spirited efforts from within the party to try and revamp the party, try and revive the party. And I want to believe this is what then informs the rebranding that has been suggested here. And of course, with the coming on board of the coalition with ODM, the proposed coalition with ODM, Jubilee Party now rebranding, I don't know how this is going to be sold to Kenyans, because Kenyans had already known Jubilee as the red color, a bit of black and yellow. Now, I don't know whether when you rebrand, you're going to be able to sell this party so fast and so quickly again within the short period of time that is remaining, because I see that as a challenge with UDA, for example, that they have now to sell their party to Kenyans within the short period of time. Now here, Jubilee has been known with these colors, and
but they were
of
able
course,
to do so in September 2016. They formed a party, and by the general election of 2017, they were good to go.
Yeah, you know, sometimes why it's easier for ODM to sell itself, it's because it has remained constant in terms of what people know.
That was actually Jubilee Party.
And what
when all the parties collapsed, they became Jubilee Party in September of 2016.
Yes, indeed. But I'm saying, it took a bit of time for Jubilee to sell itself to the public. And then, you know, ODM, for example, has been there and has not changed much in terms of how they look, their outlook. And that has made it easier for ODM to keep abreast with their supporters. Now, of course, reintroducing Jubilee to its supporters with the new rebranded logo and colors is going to be very interesting. So what we don't know is whether Jubilee is going to rebrand with adding a tinge of orange maybe on its colors, introducing blue or purple on its colors. That's going definitely to be more of a challenge. I would advise, even if they want to revamp the party, rebranding the logo and the colors may probably not be what is required in the party. Probably the Jubilee Party will need to remodel its political architecture within itself and its the way it is relating to itself between, for example, the leader and the deputy leader, between its membership, between. Is
there even any hope in that? Because, I mean, Deputy President has already declared his support for UDA.
Yeah, of course, but I think what I hear from the leadership of Jubilee, from the people who are even tending towards UDA, is that should there be a moment where they can sit together as a party organ and agree that they are going to down their war tools and the bullets are going to be taken back to the stores, then they are going to allow a political party which can now be able to move again in 2022, maybe as a Jubilee Party as it was. Remember, until today, these parties are still together in terms of working together. They have an MOU. They are all working from the same platform. And you can see both of them, because they symbiotically you know, depend on each other, they have refused to let go. They have remained united.
All right. And Professor Jacqueline Odol, of course, you're not a member of the Jubilee Party, but there is a possibility that your party and Jubilee may work together. What is the value of rebranding and what goes into that? I mean, is it just about the colors, or what defines that rebranding and what makes up a party?
Thank you very much, Sam. I think following up on our conversation last time, I would want to imagine that what Jubilee would be doing, that arm of Jubilee that from the Honorable Speaker you can see is evolving and seeking to move forward. Because I think when we look at Jubilee as a party right now, we will see that as is typical in our country when we are approaching elections, we would get ways in which sometimes we get outputs. And I want to say this with a lot of respect. I'm not saying it in a bad way. I think we've kind of seen that there are parties that at one time were even called a bus, that, you know, you kind of pull it together and it's an outfit for elections. It's really not a way in which you have an ideological leaning, that you have something that draws you, that pulls you together, but it's really a structure that enables you to access or acquire power. So from where I'm seated, looking at the manner that Jubilee has had its internal wars, and sort of looking in from out, we'll see that there is a sense in which after the handshake, there was the party leader of Jubilee, President Uhuru, in a way beginning to look at things a bit differently than he was before. So I look at this not so much as a question of color, but I actually look at it with hope, because I begin to see that perhaps Jubilee would not want to be, in terms of what we saw in the past, coming up with just a structure to get people to elections, to acquire power, and which might then lead to the sort of push and pull that we've seen. So my submission, and a really humble one, because I don't want to speak for a party that I don't belong to, but I'm looking at the evolution of parties and the manner in which ODM, as the speaker himself says, has been consistent. It's not just the color, but there has been a way in which there is something that pulls the party together. And even as the party struggles, when you get difficulties, then the party seeks to review and to look at what it is and to try and pull together.
And Senator Olekina, from ODM, what are these challenges that parties face, especially when you're approaching an election, that you have to go through that process of rebranding, making yourself what you are, what defines you, so that you're able to convince Kenyans and capture power?
Good morning, Sam. I think my sister has tried to be as candid as she can be, but she was holding off a little bit. And I think I unequivocally state that the Jubilee Party is dead. When you look at each political party during the year coming into an election, it is not about ideology, but rather about interests, people coming together. It is about numbers. It is not about merit. People are nominated based on how much they can be able to cough and also how much influence they have on the ground. So when you come and talk about colors and rebranding, it is based on those people who have a lot of influence the party, the direction they want to take. So right now you cannot tell us there's any Jubilee. Jubilee is dead. You cannot, in fact, Jubilee is swallowed partly by ODM and partly by UDA. So I think when we come to 2022, you will see a completely different formation with different colors. People will try and rebrand, people will try and sell their new look. You know, it's like going into a shop and buying a new suit. Every year there's a new design that comes up. Whatever attracts people is what will sell. But I think the issue here is that I think we need to start moving away from that. I think we need to start drumming up a lot of support for ideology, you know, trying to educate Kenyans on what we stand for. You know, we talk about corruption, but it's all different. It's a different color. You know, we talk about bringing in change, but this change, the people who are talking about change have been in government all this time. So really, Kenyans out there ought not to look at the new colors, but they ought to look at the people who are changing their colors. You know, they are the same people. So really, if you ask me what is it in ODM, I think ODM has been consistent. They have maintained the same color. So you cannot really simplify it and make it a color issue. I think you need to look at the characters involved. It's like a movie. You know, when you look at The Lion King, they have got 3 different series. There's one, it outlive its time, and then a new movie comes in and with new characters, but the theme, it's still the same. So really, the issue here should be, what can we do as politicians and what can we do as leaders to try and drum in support for ideology, for new policies that will be able to help Kenyans stay away from heavy taxation, new policy that will be able to help Kenyans be able to get jobs, not because of who you know, but because of merit. That, to me, is what we should be drumming up support.
And Senator, you said that the Jubilee Party is dead, but it's in talks with your party, ODM, to come up into a coalition for 2022. Is there any value then in your party engaging Jubilee Party in a coalition?
I think I made it very clear that Jubilee is dead. Part of it is swallowed by ODM, and part of it is swallowed by UDA. You can actually see the way it has disintegrated. Those, if you look at President Kenyatta and his deputy, they have all split. So the deputy president has taken the people who support him, and then President Uhuru still have the people who support him. So the people who support him are now being slowly swallowed by ODM. So really, there's no way you can say that that party still exists. It doesn't exist.
Okay,
if it did exist, you'd be able to see the trend in the House, in Parliament. Voting would be, you know, like right now in the Senate, you cannot tell me that there is an opposition or there is government, you know, or there is a majority and there is a minority. The way people vote is based on who they are aligned to, but rather not on the political party.
Is it a good thing or a bad thing?
It's a very sad affair for this country because we no longer have an opposition, you know, and so we can no longer check government. You know, we have no even moral authority to talk about corruption in this country anymore because we are all intertwined. We are all part of the whole chain, you know. We just vote based on our interests, but not on the interests of the Kenyans. Yes.
And we'll talk more about that when you're focusing on the different presidential bids that are being declared every single day. But now I want us to make progress. On Friday last week, the Court of Appeal concluded the hearing of the BBI appeal cases, and Justice Musinga, who led that panel of 7 judges, said that the court will be in a position to render its judgment come 20th of August 2021. That's about nearly 50 days after that hearing was concluded. Now we want to focus on what happens to what the BBI had promised, or the constitutional amendments of 2020 had promised, and the prospects of that. But let's start by listening to some voices of people that have been speaking about this, including Wakili Paul Mwangi, who was representing the BBI Secretariat in the court.
If the result was positive for BBI, then it would mean that there would be 8 months between then, or in where at least 8 months, could be even more, before the next general election to do all that work. That's more than enough time. We can't factor in incompetences into the decision of whether something can be done or not done. It can be done, and done very efficiently. That's why I said Switzerland is able to hold referendums quite very efficiently. Why would they do it and we can't do it? So, but it's because we want to factor in our inefficiencies in everything we do.
All right, that is Wakili Paul Mwangi, very confident there that there's still time, that whatever promise was in the BBI can still be achieved. It's still possible to have a referendum before the general election, and it's still possible to implement what the constitutional amendments promise. But Professor Jacqueline Odual, so now where we are, so 20th of August, a judgment is rendered, whether in favor of the BBI process or against it. Possibly, whoever is dissatisfied may appeal at the Supreme Court. But where do you see this country and that process ahead of the 2022 general election?
I think, in a way, whether you're looking at the BBI a court case, or whether you're looking at conversation we just had, you know, of the political parties and how they have evolved, I see this country really, in a way, having gone right back where we were about 2002. And in a way, it is a bit of a pity, because I think from 2002, with the realization that we wanted to get a country that would be united in diversity, but a country that would also begin to have a common uniting factor in law. That is what drove us to the 2010 Constitution. I see that what we have now is a situation where a number of us, and I'm thinking of Martin Luther King's book, which I've just been reading, and which is really very instructive, talking about leadership, that there seems to be some of us who slept in the revolution. You know, there's a way in which 2002 became a landmark that gave us a way, a roadmap where we could go, and it kind of culminated in the 2010 Constitution, where the core idea was that we wanted to see a country in which the people, in a meaningful manner, their interest, their voice would become what would determine how we run the country. And we saw a way of helping to separate the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary in uniting to determine how, through their unique mandates, they would still not take their eye from the ball. What I see some now, when I look at what is happening, and I can speak for the National Assembly. I know the Honorable Senator spoke about the Senate. When I speak about the National Assembly, I definitely know that there is ODM, and that the members of parliament who are ODM actually see themselves as ODM. The only thing that has changed, and I think I would like to urge us, all of us, as we celebrate leaders such as Martin Luther King and Nelson Mandela, we need to look at how it is that a leader, seeing when there is a crisis or when there are problems, can adjust their way of engagement. It doesn't mean they lose their focus. And I see us in the National Assembly not engaging the way that the opposition would do in a confrontational manner before. Why do they not do this? Because I think people say common sense. You can't keep doing the same thing all the time and not really move to what it is you're looking at. So you ask me, where do I see this country? I actually see that, as unfortunate as it is, that the country seems to have gone way back and to, in a way, have lost what we gained when we got the 2010 Constitution. We still have room, because we recognize that what we had wanted was a situation where a political party that would organize and say, this is what I would want to do if I got into power. And the political party that did not then form government would be dubbed opposition, and their duty would be to look in, and most of the time they would be doing it by being a shadow government, so that there would be a difference. But in what happened in 2017, and the manner in which the country was completely torn apart, I think what I would like to get us to see is that what we are seeing playing in the court is really what we are also seeing playing in parliament. It is what we are seeing really when we look at it in the executive. And that, as I look at it, is a context where the leadership is called upon. The Honorable Speaker here, the Honorable Senator, myself, yourself, Sam, as somebody who is wielding a lot of power, being in the fourth estate, we need to recognize that the country comes first. And we need to ask ourselves what it is in that constitution that was of most critical importance. And we need to then determine that whatever decisions we make, we do not just engage in a boxed, traditional, confrontational manner, but we begin to see where it is that we can negotiate. Nelson Mandela did that. We need to ask ourselves, why is it that a man who had been in prison for 27 years would come out? And when there were others who were like, are you crazy? Are you going to negotiate with these people? He could see that there was need where the country was to work together. So my hope is that as we look at the BBI court appeal, regardless of how the ruling would go, I sincerely hope that the judiciary would understand that when you are making law or making judgment, you do it in a context. You don't do it in a vacuum. And I think you need to understand that when you're looking at law and you are quoting the precedents and everything that happened in law, you need to also look at the political environment, you need to look at the energy, and most important, you need to look at the people and how it is that you are going to affect the country in terms of its economic stability, in terms of its social coherence, in terms of the way that we prepare for politics.
Okay, all right, and we'll be listening to some more voices shortly. But first, Speaker Kagushe, so now, when that judgment comes on the 20th of August, it may be too late, especially for IEBC, to engage in other matters apart from preparations for the general election. Do you think it's possible, if the Court of Appeal rules in favor of the BBI process, is it possible to implement what the constitutional amendments propose?
Well, I think we have really run out of time. And just before I mention that, there's something that Paul Mwangi says about that Switzerland is able to do its amendment just so often. And I just want to point out that a lot of our countries in the world, like Singapore and Switzerland, they have a very engaging platform between the citizen and the government. There's a way in which they have integrated research and consultations and public participation in those countries in such a way that when you wake up in the morning, you find an SMS on your phone asking you about a certain decision that the government want to take. And then you give your own feedback. So you say yes or you say no, and you can give a brief explanation as to why you support or you don't support. And in that way, the government gets a response from the public and a good number of people instantly. And so the government is informed on a daily basis on what the public wants. And so in that kind of a scenario, you have a country then which can be able to even change its laws just so often because they are properly linked with the public. So I just wanted to clarify that maybe to a lawyer and the senior counsel, the counsel, Paul Mwangi. And when it comes to the issue of the ruling on 20th of August, we have a very, very serious challenge of time because we have just so few months that remain. And if you look at what we have in terms of the commissioners and in terms of the structure of our IBC, we do not have properly constituted IBC in terms of the commissioners. And so as we are talking...
But that will be resolved shortly, probably by the end of August.
You see, by the end of August, yes. But these are new people who are coming into office who have never worked in IBC, you know. And so they are coming in as novices, so to say, and they have to first of all learn the system. And then when you also look at what is provided for in law in terms of in the constitution that we have today, in terms of establishing new boundaries or reviewing the boundaries, we have to do this 1 year before. I know to some extent the BBI has tried to kind of address that in Article 84. I want to believe 3. I mean, I think they have addressed the issue of 84.4 by saying that once we review the boundaries this time, the issue of 12 months will not be affected in the next general election. It will not be applicable in the general election. So they will participate. But there's a way in which they also did not look at 84.2, which also addresses the same issue. So you find that it's going to be very difficult, constitutionally speaking, for us then to, after 20th of August, review the boundaries and establish new
Speaker, I think you're referring to Article 89 because that's where it talks about IBC can only review boundaries not within a year to election.
So if you look at 89.4, the BBI seems to have addressed that. But if you look at 89.2, the BBI did not address that. It has it left that section not touched, and so we are still bound.
Okay.
So it is going to be very difficult for us then to be able to introduce the new constituencies before 2022.
Okay.
So if you look at legally, it's a very big challenge, and also if you look at it politically and also practically and logistically, the IBC will be very, very challenging. Can you imagine us running 2 elections? You have a no and a yes referendum in the next couple of months, and in the same time period, we have a general election campaign.
Okay.
How is it going to work out in Kenya? It's practically speaking, we are time constrained.
I want us to listen to 2 leaders, then I get to Senator Olekina here. Not 2 leaders, but some leaders that have been speaking about the prospects of the BBI upon the judgment expected on 20th of August.
They should forget the 70 constituencies by reading Article 89, sub-Article 3 of the Constitution. And Chepukati must come out very, very clearly. He have even said he's not prepared. But now he cannot delimit constituencies, either increase or decrease. Even those which are protected, he cannot touch them.
Katika Article 89, sub-Article 2 na sub-Article 4 imesema kama unataka kuleta constituency zilete 1 year mbeleni. So BBI is dead.
The issue of time, as I said, is just a question of, do you have sufficient time to shift people shift their polling station and their details in enough time for people to now identify their new voting areas and to identify their new candidates? There is nothing that would stop referendum from, not just this year, even next year. And it's a very simple thing. It's a bill. It's a yes and no question. The dream of the handshake and BBI was that one day we can actually walk into get out of work, walk into a polling station, vote, and go home and count.
It even surprised me that 20-year-old of August. Bado iko watu wanasukumia tu hiyo. Inaonekana hiyo kitu inaenda njia nyingine. Actually, the budget hii ambayo tumepitisha juzi, this week, ile pesa tumepea IEBC, if you look at it, they are to prepare for elections.
All right, that's the speaker there saying that IBC has actually not been allocated any money for a referendum. The money that is there is for preparations for the election. Then, of course, MP, the Member of Parliament for Garissa Town, Aden Duale, referring to Article 89.3. I'm sure he meant Article 89.2 and 4. But Senator Olekina, because now it appears like it's going to be very difficult, because obviously the leaders themselves cannot agree on what needs to happen should the court rule in favor of BBI. There are those that feel it's dead. There are those that feel it should just be suspended, or that idea forgotten altogether. So what happens to the good things that may have been in that document, and how does the country move forward with that in mind?
Sam, I'm going to try to be as objective as I can. Hypothetically, if the judgment is in favor of the BBI, I would agree with the attorney, Paul Mwangi, that a lot can be done. If you look at Article 256 of the Constitution, it gives Parliament a chance to be able to review the Constitution. The House of Parliament can be able to initiate an amendment to the Constitution. If you look at the issues which were not frozen, some are saying they were frozen by the BBI that relates to Article 89 in terms of 89.3, and I believe the former majority leader was actually referring to 89.3 in terms of IEBC having the mandate to review the number of the boundaries and wards prior to an election. I think if the ruling was in favor of the BBI proponent, nothing stops parliamentarians from initiating an election amendment under Article 256 of the Constitution. And I think that is those are some of the issues that some of us had looked at in terms of when we thought of coming up with a team that would lead this amendment to the Constitution through a parliamentary process. Now, the issue of Article 89.4 in terms of, I think, the constituencies, whether they can be, the review of the Constitution can happen within 12 months. We really, that's something that unless the Constitution is amended by a parliamentary process, because that is not barred by Article 255 of the Constitution in terms of the sovereignty of the nation or in terms of the structure of the government, I think that will still give room for the BBI. Now, let me be a little bit critical as well. Do we really have time for this? I would agree with the Speaker that maybe it may not be possible financially for us to be able to afford to be able to carry out 2 elections, you know? So does it mean that the BBI will die entirely? No. I think if indeed the court sees that the argument by the proponent of the BBI hold water, then nothing stops the parliamentary process from going on. Maybe the only thing which will be able to be deterred would be things that requires a referendum, because it may not actually be possible for us to carry out a referendum and carry out an election. And although we carry out a referendum, maybe if it is possible and we get some money from somewhere, we always seem to get money to carry out amendments to certain things and collect signatures, but not get money to pay pending bills or get money to send to counties. Then there are certain things which will not apply in the 2022 elections, but they will apply to subsequent elections, unless those issues are now then revisited through another parliamentary initiative. Because I believe IEBC is right in terms of them stating their mandate very clearly. And I also believe that when the proponent of the BBI was sitting down and drafting, they forgot to really look at clearly Article 89 of the Constitution. Because then they would have frozen certain elements. I know the Speaker had alluded to the fact that IEBC attempted in, I think in amendment to it, I think the Amendment 84 in trying to address Article 89.4, but that to me will not be able to cure the problems which would be brought by the other provisions of Article 89.
And when you say of a parliamentary initiative, because Musalia Mudavadi is on record saying that there are certain things that can be done through Parliament and should be considered for such, you require 2/3 majority at both levels. Do you think that's a possibility given the political framework, I mean, the political landscape currently in Parliament?
You know, politics is a game of blowing cold and hot air at the same time. You know, today you blow cold air, tomorrow you blow hot air. I think nothing, if it is something which would be able to be for the good of the nation, nothing will stop parliamentarians from coming together. I'll give you a good example. The issue of the prompt payment bill, which really, it's a parliamentary process. It did not require the BBI for us to say that we should pay pending bills within 30 days, you know. Nothing will stop parliamentarians from passing that legislation and implementing it. We have, sometimes we rush in drafting legislation and passing them. And then later on, we look at the situation and we say, this cannot suffice. Because if you look at what is happening now with the Elections Amendment Bill, which we have proposed in Parliament, and also with the Campaign Financing Act, which is in effect, a lot of people are questioning and saying, well, you know, who passed these bills? Yet they were passed by Parliament. So really what we require is, we require to carry out proper due diligence on what will be able to help the nation in the next coming election, and what will be able to be for posterity in this nation. And I know Raila Odinga and the president were probably looking at things that will be good for posterity. Maybe somewhere in between, things got washed out in terms of what is important for the nation because of political interest. So unless we can be able to divorce ourselves from our own personal interest and we look at the interest of the nation, nothing will be achieved.
I just want to just to add on what the Senator has said is the parliamentary initiative can actually work. And I, in fact, think if the issues that need to be subjected to the parliamentary initiative are subjected, they will most likely be able to get the threshold that is required. And why is this? Why do I say this? It's because most of the issues that can actually go through parliamentary initiative do not refer or do not touch on the issue of the structure of government. And remember, the reason why the two principles have not been pro-parliamentary initiative is because the things they require changed in the constitution actually touch on the structure of government. And most of those things will have to go through a referendum. And so talking of the parliamentary initiative, it is likely to address a lot of issues which, in fact, the parliamentarians may not disagree on. And so they are likely to vote for them, or even they are likely to not to vote for them, because they will generally agree. But on the issues which have made the political class differ are the key issues that have to do with the structure of government, and they're the issues that the two principles would like passed. And so they're the things that would have to go through the referendum. And so that is where the issue
For you to increase the number of constituencies, do you require a referendum?
No, you don't.
Well, it depends on how you look at it. But you remember the issue of reviewing the constituencies is a mandate of the IEBC.
Right.
Yes.
And the IEBC, for example, now they have said they have 12 years that they have been given by the Constitution to do that. And so already they are saying by March we are going to be closing this window, and we are not likely now to change anything. And so, as the Senator has properly said, they will not be touching on the issue of the protected constituencies, nor adding any new constituencies for the coming general election of 2022. So, but they still say we still have up to 2024 when we have been given time to change the constituencies.
And of course,
and review boundaries.
The contestation has been that if you do that, then you're meaning that the people that have been unfairly represented in Parliament will have to wait until 2027. But Professor Dole, as we take a break from this, so if whatever happens on 20th of August, and it's not possible to go ahead with a referendum, or even if you go through the parliamentary initiative, there are certain things that cannot be changed because they still require a referendum. Does it mean that after August 2022, all that is lost, or what do you think can be done post-2022 election?
I actually believe, Sam, that even as you listen to the Honorable Speaker, and I was in fact very pleased that he chose to make a rejoinder before I came on board, because there is a leaning. If you listen to us talk, and that is the tragedy, what I am very sad about in our leadership, that you would sit and look objective, and I do know that the Senator, in this case, I would admit, made the effort to be objective. But I'm listening to the Speaker. As I listened to him before, all Kenyans looking can see where he's leaning. And this is the problem.
Where is he leaning?
He is leaning, and I think you need to see this. He's leaning in the group that, in a way, never wanted the BBI. And if you listen to the conversation that people hold, very rarely do you see a conversation saying, so what was it that this BBI was curing? What is it that was good about this BBI? I would actually like any leader anywhere to let me know of any process or program that has been developed that was 100% correct. And I find it very sad, Sam, that we have leadership, whether they are in the judiciary, this was my discussion and my answer earlier, or whether they are in parliament, or whether they are in the executive, that are more strong on power, and as the Senator indicated, on lineage, who is it that is the one that I feel is leading. Instead of looking at Kenya, the sovereignty of the people, and what leadership requires. The problem is that we are politicking all the time and very rarely providing leadership. There is a sense in which we need, and I start with myself, and I invite the speaker and I invite the senator to look at the context and say that when you look at what is playing out now, and when you look at the arguments we are giving from a legal perspective, you will actually see that there are those who had indeed used the legal process to ensure that you keep putting cases in the court, to ensure that you then say you have only 12 months, to ensure that you cannot now have the referendum. My direct question to them is, then why do you waste your time talking about the sovereignty of the people? I do not see you thinking about the people, because what I see you doing is looking at the context, playing politics. In other words, politics is choosing what it is that you would like, trying, if you can, to persuade everyone to go to your direction, or in another way, churning the country, raising emotions, or just making it difficult by making reference to what is existing in law or in statutes. So what am I saying? As I listen, I know that, as the Honorable Senator said, you cannot invoke budget. And I know that there is a sense in which I say this with confidence. I just came from a parliamentary training on the role of parliament in budget. And I do know, as the Honorable Senator admitted, that parliamentarians now would know, including even at the county level, that I do not think they rise to play the role that they're supposed to. Technically, politics gets to affect so much of what is going on that you cannot, in your right mind in Kenya today, tell me that the reason why you cannot have a referendum is because you would say that there is no budget. I think if there is a will, if there was a sense of recognizing that they're truly for the sake of the sovereignty of the people that you talk about, that they are needed in this country. Sam, you asked me, where are we in Kenya? If there were leaders that actually thought about this country and looked at 1992, what happened in the clashes, if there were leaders who thought about 2007 and saw what happened in this country, if there are leaders who saw what happened in 2017, and they honestly ceased to look at the President Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Amolo Odinga with this idea of always fighting, that they were looking for power. But instead, they say, was there any merit in seeking to try and unite this country? And do we have an obligation as we go to election in 2022? Can we afford the kind of confusion, the sort of corruption, the energy that goes on? Sam, my submission is that I listen, and as I wait for the verdict on August 20th, and I'm hoping that the judiciary and those who are making decisions listening to me need to know that you cannot have law and make law now muffle people. You make law to address the aspirations, to address the concerns of the people. And therefore, as I said earlier, I think any judgment, for example, needs to take into account not just the law, but it needs to take into account the implications of what it is that they would say, given what the country is looking for.
All right, and just to take a short...
And the Honourable Speaker will not come in now.
We have to take a break.
He has to wait for you. I can't, because I've noticed that he did it earlier, and I'm just going to put him in his place. I need him to remember now he will not come.
Let's do this.
He will not.
It's going to be hard because you're sitting on the same table, but you'll find peace during the break. When we come back, we'll be looking at the presidential bills that have been announced by different leaders, including the Speaker of the National Assembly, who says that he wants to unite the country. After the break.